Hello, I am Dr. Gaurav Dikshit from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, and today we will cover the introduction part of the course Digital Transformation and Technological Innovation. This particular course has been developed as a core course from the Information Systems discipline. So, let us understand what is information systems. Now, information systems is an applied discipline of computer science and engineering that draws from other disciplines to shape valuable information products and services for target end users. Now, what are these disciplines where it draws from? So, some of these reference disciplines could be engineering, mathematics, management science and behavioral sciences. So, the main idea in information system is to learn from the research that is being conducted in some of these reference discipline and then use computer science and engineering or information technology in general to shape valuable information products and services for the benefit of target end users. Now, let us understand the research in the information systems field. So, mainly it examines the technological system or the social system, but it also can examine both technological system and the social system side by side. Along with it also investigate phenomena that emerge from their interactions. That means social system or the elements within the social system interacting with the elements of the technological system. So, therefore, overall technological system, social system are both side by side simultaneous analysis or examination or research on it, and then most importantly the interactions between these two systems, technological system and the social system. Now, what is the main difference from parent discipline, that is computer science and engineering, and the other reference disciplines that we just talked about, the engineering, the mathematics, management science and the behavioral sciences, is that the focus is on the emergent socio-technical phenomena. Now, in terms of the research audience, the scholars, people who work in information systems area, what they are concerned with. So, scholars in general in any field, if they are concerned with development, use and application of traditional, new and emerging information technology to model representations of real world systems, then they would benefit from what is happening in information systems research. And sometimes because information technology is being used to model representations of real world systems, these systems sometimes are also referred to as IT based systems. So, the research audience in general is scholars who are in any way concerned with the use of information technology for real life, real world problems in general. Now, if we look at the practical relevance in industrialized world, the IT based systems, they have become ubiquitous. We see them everywhere, including this the video lectures that we are producing as part of NPTEL and SAM courses. There also we see the application of these IT based systems in different aspects of the production of these courses, right. So, IT based systems have become ubiquitous. They are important to both, whether we talk about the private or the public sectors, to individuals, organizational, multinational and transnational organizations, whether we talk about the organizations which are present in a more distributed format, they are present in different countries, or they have a more centralized location in one country and other locations they have a unit where they are doing some of their work or catering to that local market, right. So, IT based systems are involved in everywhere, right. So, we will see more examples in the lecture for the same. Now, if we look at other areas, different areas where IT based systems are being used, so they would include a whole lot of areas, but to name a few: agriculture, manufacturing, services, education, medicine, defense, government. Now, as we already seeing in our day to day life, everything or most of the things, activities, whether at home or at workplace, we are doing through our smartphones, interacting with the apps and going on with the task and activities. So, all this is comes under purview of IT based systems and overall under information systems. Now, if we look for similar applied disciplines, just like as I said that information systems being a subdiscipline or applied discipline of computer science and engineering, what are other applied disciplines in other fields? So, some of these are bioinformatics. They also use a lot of analysis, data, IT systems and other things, geographical information systems, medical informatics, and then accounting information systems, which accounting comes under business umbrella, but there is so much of use of IT systems that we refer to that uses as accounting information systems. Then there is a neuro information systems where neuroscience applications or neuroscience research using a lot more information systems, IT systems, and therefore this area has emerged there as well. So, these are some of the examples of applied disciplines which are similar to what information systems, right. Now, having said all this, then let us look at a definition of information systems which covers some of the things that we have talked till now. So, definition goes like this: an information system is a real world system with human and machine elements that process activities and tasks using information technology, relevant artifacts and feedback loops to save valuable information, products and services for target end users. So, here you see that we are talking about a real world system which is having both the human and machine elements, and then process activities and tasks. Then we talk about the information technology, the other artifacts that might be part of those activities and tasks, and in that process the information technology might also be being used. And in addition, the feedback loops, while these human and machine elements are there and in terms of completing the activities or executing the activities and tasks, there might be some learnings from the shortcomings of the overall information system at the human level or at the machine level, the algorithm logic level, or at output, input or other levels, right. So, some feedback loops can be generated which can then be worked upon to shape valuable information, products and services, and so that the end users, the target end users benefit from it. Now, if we look at examples of information systems, then first let us go through some of the software products for enterprise users. So, first we will focus on the enterprise users, and you can see that first one is ERP. So, there are a few examples that I have noted down here, one product from SAP, and then Oracle, NetSuite, and then in case of SCM. So, ERP was enterprise resource planning. So, that is a particular category of enterprise system, and then the second one is SCM, that is supply chain management system, and few products in that category is SAP, IP, BP, and the Oracle SCM cloud. And then third category under this is CRM. So, that is customer relationship management system, that is another category of enterprise system. So, one product that I have noted down here is Salesforce CRM. Then next one is business intelligence, that is another category for enterprise system, where algorithms, whether it is about machine learning, analytics and AI in general, they are being applied on data so that some meaningful insights are generated for data driven decision making. So, some products that are listed here are Microsoft Power BI and Tableau. So, essentially these products mainly focus on the visual analysis, visualization, charts, because this is BI as such as an enterprise system is mainly for consumption of managerial executives, right. So, therefore, more application of visualization and descriptive and other kinds of signals that are there. So, these are some of the examples of information systems, the software products which are actually enterprise systems. So, they target the enterprise users. Then let us look at next category, that is software products for professional users. So, the software engineers or other professionals in different industries, the analyst, business analyst data engineers, data scientists. There are so many professionals across different industries, and they might benefit from some of these very generic products like Microsoft Copilot, which is like new thing where you can use generative AI to help in the task or the activities that you are doing. And then the Microsoft Office, the traditional software product which most of us use to create documents and create slides, presentations, and many other things. Right. So this particular category is for the professional user. Then there are software products for conferencing and meeting. So Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Workplace. So these are some of the examples of the products. So what they facilitate? They facilitate meetings, people working or collaborating on a project. They can meet, share, create meeting notes using some generative AI app and all that. So these products are another example for this category. Then in case of e-commerce, we have Adobe Commerce or earlier Magento. So this is another category. So in case you are into e-commerce industry, then some of the companies might be using Adobe Commerce, Magento, this product to run their websites and the back end and many other things that goes with it. So this is another example of an information system in case of e-commerce. And the next one is software products for email. So this is something that is most organizations, they have sort of adopted email as their main communication tool. So there are also two products that are listed: Gmail, Google Workspace, and the Jimbra, the open source option that we have for email. So that is also there. Right. So under email category, these two examples which can be considered as information systems. Then internet platforms for social networks. Now there are so many people who log into these social networking websites, create accounts, interact with people or the content or whatever they want to follow. So this also becomes an example of information systems. So some of these platforms are LinkedIn, X, and Facebook. So you would notice that the previous few examples I was using the term software products, both in case of enterprise and the software and other categories, enterprise and the professional and other categories. And here I've started using the term internet platforms, not software products, because some of these apps actually act like a platforms with network effect that will be discussing later in this course, right. So here you would see different sites are connected to some of these platforms, and we'll understand their interactions and some of the concepts related to that later. So this category, internet platforms for social network, this is another example of an information system. Then next is internet platforms for payments, right. So now for everything we are making digital transactions, digital payments. So let's see a few of the categories here. Digital wallets or real time payments. We have some of these apps: PhonePe, Google Pay, these being the main leaders in Indian market. And then if you are a credit card or debit card user, then Visa and MasterCard, these are the two platforms which facilitate the transactions for the among cards which are in compliance with Visa and MasterCard platform. Then there is gateways, payment gateways. So there are two names that I have noted down here: Razorpay and PayPal. So these are two examples of internet platforms in case of gateways, payment gateways, right. So these are some of the examples, internet platforms for payments, which can also be considered as information systems. Then next set of examples are like these: internet platforms for publishing. So all of us nowadays, we prefer to read from PDFs using our tablets, smartphones, notebooks, which are more mobile devices in a way, more portable. So some of the examples are Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, so this is for books. And then in case of scientific articles, we have Elsevier, Springer Nature. So these are few examples. So these can also be considered as examples of information systems, right. So these were the internet platforms for publishing. Next up is the internet platforms for streaming, right. So what are the examples in this category? So in case of video streaming, I have noted down Netflix, YouTube, TikTok. So these are examples of information systems which are sort of platforms, internet platforms for streaming video first up. Then music, under music we have Spotify, Apple Music, right. So these are the two companies, these are the two apps which sort of dominate most of the market share in digital music category, right. So these can also be considered important examples of internet platforms for streaming and can be considered examples of information systems. Then few more examples of information systems, new categories, internet platforms for news, right. So we have in few years we have transitioned from acquiring or getting our or receiving our news from TV channels to printed newspapers to we have shifted to online news, internet news. So what are the examples? So under general category we have some of these popular news websites, news portals, BBC, CNN, TOI, NDTV and all that. So these can also be considered as example of information systems under the category internet platforms for news. Similarly, the next step is internet platforms for booking. So in this category we whenever we make our travel arrangements, travel plans, so nowadays everything we do via internet, via these apps. So under flight and hotel category we have some examples like Agoda, booking.com, Skyscanner. Some of these websites, web portals I have noted down here, and these are also examples of information systems and under the category internet platforms for booking. Similarly, in case of movie or some event that we want to book or that we want to go for, so BookMyShow, Paytm, so these are some Indian examples in this category. Now moving on to next example category, that is internet platforms for shopping or ordering. So in this case 4 categories placed them to. So first one is general. So we have generic e-commerce websites, Amazon and Flipkart, so where we shop or order for certain items. And then there is another category, fashion, I have noted on Myntra. Then food, I have noted on Zomato, Swiggy. Then we have delivery, there I have noted on Blinkit and Instamart. So these are some of the apps which act like internet platforms for shopping, ordering, and these can be considered as an examples of information systems. Moving on to the next category, that is internet platforms for advertising. So here I have noted down few, for example Google Ads, Meta Ads and also Amazon Ads, right. So this pretty much covers the whole most of the options or more dominant options, so to say, in case of digital marketing and including social media marketing, right. So now many companies they prefer to advertise their ad on digital platforms. So these are some of the platforms which facilitate that, and they can also be considered as examples of information systems. Then moving on to the next category, that is internet platforms for travel. Now in this case if we just take the subcategory for taxi, then Uber and Ola, these are two examples of the apps which can be considered information systems under this category internet platforms for travel. So let's move on to the next category, that is cloud services. So all of us for our file sharing we use Google Drive or OneDrive, right, some of these popular platforms, right. So this category is there, cloud services for hosting apps, right. So here what are the examples? So this one is mainly for businesses, where if you are running a business and you want to host an app, then cloud services being provided by these vendors, Amazon Web Services, that is from Amazon, Microsoft Azure from Microsoft, and Google Cloud Platform GCP from Google. So these 3 vendors, cloud vendors, Amazon, Microsoft and Google, their cloud services where they are facilitating businesses to host their apps, they can also be considered an example of information systems, because we can clearly observe that the interaction between the business or the IT team of the business interacting with a cloud services being provided by these vendors, and then they decide what kind of software they want to host there in the cloud, or what they will do with their data, what kind of interaction, how many users will log on to it, whether they'll open it to the customers or whether this is only for the internal consumption, right. So all these interaction points come up, right. So that emergent socio-technical phenomena comes up, right. So this is another example of information systems, cloud services for hosting apps. Then moving on to, now we earlier talked about the software products which were for the enterprise, then for the professional, then we moved on to internet platforms. Many of them we use for our day-to-day uses. Then we are moving to the AI systems, right. Now first category under this is AI systems for forecasting. Now here two subcategories I have noted down. First is finance. So if you want to forecast stock prices, because you might be making your investment decision, you want to buy some stocks, sell some stocks. So the AI system that is giving you that input, that decision making input, whether a set of stocks or a particular stock or the stock that you are interested in, whether it will go up or down the next day or next week or next month. So those inputs you are incorporating your decision making, and therefore the whole interaction, whether it's about the machine element or the human element, and the interaction and the feedback loop, put together all this we can consider as an information system. So under finance category we can note down stock prices, then market volatility could be another example. Then others can be product demand. We can have an AI system for product demand, because that might be connected to our inventory management and other production planning and all those aspects. Then energy consumption. So for the energy producing companies or distributing companies, to ability using AI system to be able to forecast energy consumption can be beneficial, because then they can plan their operations accordingly. Next category here is AI systems for internet platforms. So internet platforms we earlier talked about, and we consider those platforms as such information systems, but AI systems for those platforms is another example for information systems, because they can also benefit from AI. For example, recommender systems for personalization. So we see many of these apps, whether it is YouTube or Netflix, when we are watching when we have sufficient history of watching certain items, then these platforms, whether YouTube or Netflix, they start recommending some items to us. So the system, the AI system that is doing that is referred to as recommender systems. So this can also be considered as an example of information systems, which is actually and under the category of AI systems for internet platforms. Then the next one is link prediction. Link prediction for social networking or search, right. So whenever we log into the system and we go to Google search or any other search engine, and we have certain information that we are looking for, and we enter our query terms, and then we go to another scenario is that we log into the social networking websites and we look to connect to our friends, right. So in both these cases AI system which is about predicting link, what could be the meaningful links that can give you the information that you are looking for, and that can connect you to the friends that you are looking for. So this is another example for AI systems for internet platforms. Next is AI systems for communication or interaction, right. So now most of us are totally taken by the hype that is around the large language models, the agentic AI and everything. Now there are already some successful platforms running like ChatGPT and Gemini, Google Assistant, many others, Perplexity, right. So some of these examples I have noted down here. So conversational search / Q&A AI systems which are facilitating conversational search / Q&A. So these are some of the products are Google Gemini, Perplexity. So these are some examples where user comes up with their own query that the detail that they are looking for, or the answer that they are looking for, or the conversation that they are looking for. They enter that query, and that particular platform, whether it's Google Gemini or Perplexity, the AI system that responds back with a response, right. So, the whole interaction that is happening there and the overall setup, considering that we this can also be considered as an example of information system. Then virtual assistant, general category Google Assistant, which we can use to control certain things, to make calls and other things using mobile phones. Similarly, another categories, subcategories, virtual assistant for music, for example Amazon Alexa, that we interact with if we want to play a music. So, here a human interacting with an AI system to play certain content, certain music or some other things, or get answer to a particular query, right. So, therefore, the overall human machine element and the feedback loop, the corrections, improvements, all that put together, and the interactions and the emergent socio-technical phenomena that is there, we can consider this as an example of information system. Then in case of social media, we have Grok AI. So, that is another example where Grok has access to all the data, all the tweets that are there in the platform X, and whenever we have a query about some political situation or sports or any other topic of interest, it is able to gather sufficient feed that is there already there in the X platform, and then in general in internet, and able to come up with a response. So, this is an example of users interacting with a AI system which is hosted on a social media platform X, and then again sometimes you do not get the the response as per your expectation or as per your expectation in terms of accuracy and other aspects, other metrics, then you again revise your question, and that whole interaction creates this an example of another information system. Moving on, now having gone through so many things from software products to internet platforms to AI systems. So, therefore, all aspects of our life, whether we talk about the enterprise context or the professional context or our personal context, we are touched by these IT based systems, or in general we are touched by these information systems where human machine interactions are happening and the socio technical phenomena is emerging. So, all this is happening day in day out, and all this comes under the purview of information systems area. So, then there are so many options for conducting research. So, what are the directions for innovation in information systems? So, we can take various angles to it. So, I have created few categories here. First up we can take the customer angle. So, from the customer angle, what are the directions that we can take for innovation or research? So, handling the different needs of existing customers. So, whether we can using information systems and the data that is coming there and the feedback loops that are there, can we take advantage of all that human machine interaction, the data, the feedback loop, and use that to understand whether there are any different needs for existing customers, and that is how we can improve our the current state of the overall information systems or a particular component of it, maybe just the machine, maybe just the algorithm, or maybe the human interaction or the interface that is there, or maybe some other aspect in terms of output or the input. We can make changes to the input or the output or other aspects to it. Then solving new customers' needs. This is another angle, whether the existing information system it is catering to all kinds of customer, or whether there are some customers which are which have not interacted with the platform, interacted with the information systems or the systems that are part of it. Then whether we can take this angle for innovation, for research, whether we can solve needs of these new customers so that they can also become part of our ecosystem, or they can also become part one of target end users for our information system. Then moving on from a product and service angle. So, from a product and service angle, what could be the angle for innovation or angle for research here? We can improve the current state of information products and services. So, when I say current state, in the sense whether the AI system different versions of ChatGPT has come. So, that is a continuous improvement, right. So, OpenAI teams keeps coming up with the new stable release, new versions of ChatGPT. So, that is what is being referred to refer to here, that improving the current state. Similarly for other AI systems, similarly for other internet platforms, whether it is social media platforms, Facebook or X, or whether it is search engine. So scope of improvement is there, and whether current state can be improved, so that can be another angle for innovation or research. Now moving on to a few other directions for innovation. Now from process and activity angle. So can we change some of the characteristics that are linked to these information systems, for example structure, integration level, complexity, the patterns, the exception handling that is happening. Maybe some of the exceptions are not being handled by the current state of information systems, or the machine element of it, right, or the human element of it. So whether we can change some of those characteristics, whether the structure is quite complex, whether we can simplify it, right, whether we can simplify the AI system that is within it, that is powering the overall, that is giving the machine part to an information systems, whether we can improve that. Integration with different sources, right, whether the input might be coming from a limited set of sources, whether we can expand on it, or whether we can connect to other information systems, right. So that is there. Then the complexity, whether users find it easy to interact with that information system. So all these process and activity angles are there, the patterns, the exception handling and all that. Then within this category itself, there are other things that we can change. For example, we can change details, for example adding, removing, or combining steps, so that the overall information systems improve, or we can change execution procedures for specific steps. So all these are some of the research directions, or some of the research angles or innovation angles that are there from the process and activity angle. Moving on, now from the human participant angle, because one side of it is human, so it is all the whole information system. One important part here is human machine interaction that is happening, as we talked about. So whether we can take the human participant angle, which is actually very common research angle in business context, and in AI context, or information technology context, the focus shifts more on the technical element or the machine element, while in the business context focus tends to shift on the human element. And in between the human machine interaction, the most interesting part, some of the researchers focus on that also. So if we look at the human participant angle, training angle, whether training for new skills are needed, whether the professionals in an organization, whether they needed training to be able to work with agentic AI, or LLMs in general, right, or any other technology, for example blockchain, or any other edge computing for that matter. Changing incentives, because one hurdle could be if human part of the information system, if they are not able to interact sufficiently well within an information system, then there might not be meaningful output, the meaningful information product and services that we can generate out of the information systems. So therefore whether changing incentives sometimes work even with a information system which has issues with it, but if you change the incentives, then people are able to figure out ways around, and they are able to interact with it, and they are able to come up with meaningful output in terms of information products and services. So this is another angle. And changing social aspects, whether the culture, whether the other rules, norms, managerial support, other things, whether they can help in terms of improving the overall benefit that we are extracting from information systems. So all these angles are there. Idea is to either improve the adoption or the diffusion, or improve the output, some element of it where humans perspective is also accounted for. So till now let us do a quick recap of what we have discussed till now. So we have discussed what is information systems, the field of it, and the definition of information systems, the similar disciplines. We also talked about different examples of lots of examples of information systems, starting from the software products to internet platforms to AI systems. Then we started our discussion on what are some of the research directions that people undertake for innovation in information systems. So let's stop here. We'll continue in the next session. Thank you.